Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military Summary channel, and today we will discuss the situation in Ukraine on the 11th of November of 2024. Today we have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first we're going to talk about the South Donetsk direction where the Russians continue their offensive operation. First we're going to talk about the Velika Novoselivka direction because we have very important updates from the south and from the city itself. Let's discuss the situation in the village of Makarivka. Yesterday on the 10th of November in the evening, the pro-Russian sources began publishing this this photo with the Russian flag. And as you can see, the Russian flag was raised above some ruins, and the author of this photo reported that the Russians managed to take under complete control the village of Makarivka. And based on this video, a lot of mappers adjusted their maps. For example, pro-Russian resources did that, and the same was done by the neutral mappers. As for us, we turned this territory into contested area because for us it is too early to adjust the map in the territory of Makarivka due to complete absence of any possibilities to geolocate these ruins. There are very likely that this might be ruins from somewhere else. Furthermore, we don't see a Russian soldier in the vicinity of the flag, and the flag could be established by the dropping from drone. So that's why we are keeping this territory as a contested area. Furthermore, we had reports from different pro-Russian military experts that during the previous 24 hours, the Russians conducted several offensive operations on the line between the village of Shakhtarska and Velika Novoselivka itself, and between the villages of Zolotaya Niva and Velika Novoselivka as well. So as a result of those fast-lighting attacks, the Russians managed to break through the Ukraine defense belt and to enter the southeastern part of the settlement and to dig in deeper. As for now, we're not going to change the map because, once again, this report was published without any video, and this report wasn't confirmed by any of reliable resources, but we should keep this information in our minds because maybe something big is happening right now in this direction. Now let's move further. Let's talk about the Sukhi Yali river area. We have lots of villages there, like from Zelinivka to the village of Elizabetovka. The Ukrainians are still holding their lines, but the Russians continue tightening the noose around these settlements. First, let's discuss the southern direction. According to information we have, as a result of clashes, the Russians managed to improve their positions and to maintain the line of combat contact between the village of Maximovka and the village of Trudova. So just a small gains, just small updates in this area according to pro-Ukrainian mappers. So once again, this is the map by the end of the 10th of November. This is the map by the end of 11th of November. Just small gains in this direction. Now let's talk about the most important territory, about the Russian offensive operation in the direction of the village by the name of Dalnya. Today, pro-Ukrainian mappers confirmed that the Russians, yesterday, the pro-Ukrainian mappers confirmed that as a result of clashes, the Russians managed to take under control this significant number of fields and tree lines in the fortifications. Today, the same information was confirmed by neutral mappers, but in comparison with the previous day, we have additional changes on the ground along this tree line in the direction of the village by the name of Dalnya. These changes were made by neutral mappers and by military summary map based on this video that was published by the 33rd Mechanized Brigade. In this video, we can see how the units of the 33rd Mechanized Brigade of the Armored Forces of Ukraine were attacking the Russian forces along this tree line. The Ukrainians were counter-attacking the Russian positions with a Leopard 2A4 tank, and when the tank was empty and returned back to the mainland, the Russians managed to save their presence along this tree line. Based on this video, most of the mappers have adjusted their maps. This is very important offensive operation because now we can clearly see that the main goal of the Russians is not to attack the city of Kurakhove in front. Now we understand that most likely the Russians are planning to outflank the city of Kurakhove by attacking the village of Dalnya. And the current task and the main task for the armored forces of Russian Federation is to take under control the village itself and to physically cut 0510 road with the purpose to destroy the Ukrainian logistic in this area, which will lead to complete collapse of Ukrainian defense. This situation, if the Russians are able to take the village of Dalnya under control, will lead to the creation of possible cauldron in between the village of Uspenovka, Ganovka, Elizabetovka, Ilinka. The Ukrainians most likely would be forced to fall back if the Russians are able to advance this way, and of course this will increase the risk of being encircled or being cut in cauldron for those Ukrainians that are currently located in the village of Kurakhove. As for the village of Kurakhove, we have two important updates. Before that, another important thing that the Russians managed to achieve by attacking the direction of Dalny, the Russians managed to improve their positions to the south of the N15 road, because during the previous days the Russians conducted and carried out the significant number of attacks in the direction of Kurakhove along the roads between the city of Donetsk and the city of Kurakhove itself, and the Ukrainians were attacking the Russian convoys, Russian tanks with a significant number of drones. Now, by the result of these improvements of the flank positions, the Russians managed to improve the security of this road, which will lead to less losses during their attacks in the direction of the city. Now let's talk about Kurakhove. Today we got reports from different mappers that the Russians managed to improve their positions in the eastern part of the city. According to neutral mappers, the Russians managed to take under control several streets in the eastern part. So this is the map by the end of the 10th of November. This is the map by the end of 11th of November. So now we see the Russians are increasing the pressure from the south. The Russians increase the pressure from the east, and the most important updates are coming from the territory of the dam that is located between the village of Stare Terny and Kurakhove itself. Today, lots of pro-Russian and pro-Ukrainian channels reported that the Russians or the Ukrainians, very difficult to understand because both sides reports about completely different things, somebody destroyed the dam. So this is the dam that located in the western part of Kurakhove water reservoir, in the northwestern part from the city of Kurakhove itself, and according to different sources, this dam was destroyed. And of course, this situation will lead to complete to the pollution. And now we understand that the water from Kurakhove water reservoir is going to leave the reservoir itself and will move in the southwestern direction. Different military experts and different experts are saying that now this territory is going to be polluted in the very near future, probably during the next several days, 2-3 days, and this territory will be completely gone under the water. Of course, in 5, 7, 6 days, the water will be gone from this territory, but obviously the next 3 days are going to be very critical for the Ukrainians, because during the next 3 days the Ukrainians will have less possibilities to supply and support their forces in the city of Kurakhove itself, from the village by the name of Ulakli through the village of Dachna and then in the direction of Kurakhove. So from today, if the information about the destruction of Kurakhove dam is correct, is right, is truth, then the Ukrainians most likely for the next several days will lose their possibilities to support forces using this road of support. Now the Ukrainians have just one option to support their force in Kurakhove through the village, through the river of Sukhye Yali, but this is also very dangerous thing, because from the village of Dalny, the Russians most likely are about to cut this supply road physically. So summarizing everything, we can make a conclusion that somehow maybe the Russians, maybe just accidentally the Ukrainians themselves, managed to encircle the city of Kurakhove. The city was encircled by the Russians from the south in the area of the village of Dalny, and the city was cut from the mainland by the pollution that is currently taking place to the west of the settlement. Very critical and very dangerous situation, and the next 3 days are going to be decisive and vital for the garrison of the armored forces of Ukraine in the settlement itself. Furthermore, the destruction of the dam led not just to complete critical situation and disaster for the Ukrainians in Kurakhove, but also for those Ukrainians that are currently located in this artillery pocket between the villages of Solntsevka, the village of Stare Terny, Berestki, Ilinka, the rest of Novoselidovka and Voznesenka. Those Ukrainians that are currently located here were cut from the mainland, because the Ukrainians from this pocket were using their support through the dam. That was the first road that Ukrainians were using to supply their force and to support them, and the second road was going through Petropavlovka, Shevchenka, and then to this pocket as well. If the information about the dam is correct and is right, then most likely the Ukrainians that are currently located in this pocket lost at least 50% of their supply possibilities, which also will lead sooner or later to complete defeat in this direction. So once again, as you can see, the situation for the Ukrainians is very critical. Let's wait what is going to be next. Meanwhile, the Russians continue their offensive operation, and today we got some interesting videos from the village of Novodmytrivka, from the central part. The units of the 114th Motor Rifle Brigade of the Armed Forces of Russian Federation published the video of how they were fighting for the settlement of Novodmytrivka. There are lots of episodes of how the Russians were bombing and attacking the Ukrainians, and in the most final part of the video we can see the farms, and we can see the building with the red roof, and we can see the Russian soldiers that were raising the flag from the window of the building with the red roof. This building was very easy to geolocate because there are just 3 or 4 buildings with the same color, so the Russians raised the flag exactly in this point. Based on this video, most of the mappers have adjusted the Novodmytrivka. Some of the mappers reported that based on this video they made the conclusion that the entire village was captured. As for us, we just adjusted the northern part. We still have some doubts about the eastern part, about the southern part, of course, and about the western part. Most likely the Ukrainians still save their presence there, and there are very heavy clashes, but due to the situation with the dam, we have some doubts whether the Ukrainians are able to hold their lines for another week. Most likely they would be forced to fall back, and most likely the Ukrainians would be forced to abandon the significant number of territories. Now let's move further and let's talk about the western Selidovo direction, because the Russians continue advancing. During the previous 24 hours we got another batch of videos of how the Russians were FPV-droning the Ukrainian vehicles, and of course the Russians first bombing and attacking the vehicles and tanks and artillery, and on the other hand the Russian infantry, Russian stormtroopers are moving along the railways in the same direction. During the previous 24 hours, we got report that the Russians, as a result of offensive operation, managed to take under control this intersection of roads, of M30 road and the road between the city of Selidovo and the city of Pokrovsk. So this is very important stronghold, and from now on, from the 11th of November, the stronghold is currently under complete Russian control. Now let's move further and let's talk about the territory between the city of Toretsk and the city of Chasiv Yar. The Russians are intensifying their activity in this direction, as the most important updates are coming from the city of Chasiv Yar, because we have completely opposite reports from both sides. For example, the neutral mappers reported that the Ukrainians managed to carry out several counterattacks in the area of the Seversky Donetsk-Donbass Canal, and as a result of those counterattacks the Ukrainians managed to restore control over some positions that were recently captured by the Russians. We have one video that confirms maybe this. In this video we can see Ukrainian vehicle that was damaged and destroyed, maybe as a result of Ukrainian counterattack. Anyway, this the reports that we received from neutral mappers. As for pro-Russian resources, they reported that as a result of offensive operation, the Russians managed to enter the village of Stupochki along the N32 road. So as for now, it's very difficult to understand what exactly is happening here. From one side, the Ukrainians are attacking, from the other side, the Russians are attacking as well. And as I understand, the truth is somewhere in the middle. So let's wait for several days and then we're going to understand what exactly is happening here right now. Maybe the Russians managed to improve their positions, and if the Russians indeed took under control these territories, then most likely the Ukrainians in the city of Chasiv Yar were got into operational encirclement, or about to be caught in the operational encirclement. As for the Siversk direction, during the previous 24 hours we haven't received anything, just several bombs that the Russians launched on the territory of Dronovka. Nothing special, just regular activity. The same story, nothing special from the south in Kupiansk direction. There are very heavy clashes on the territory of Terny, but without any changes on the ground. Very interesting updates are coming from the central and the northern Kupiansk direction. As for the central Kupiansk direction, the situation is very critical, and today the Minister of Defense of Russian Federation reported that as a result of clashes, the Russians managed to secure the village of Kolisnykivka completely. So let's compare the map. This is the map by the end of the 10th of November. This is the map by the end of the 11th of November. As you can see, small changes based on the Minister of Defense report. But the most important updates are coming from the northern Kupiansk direction, and as you can see, during the previous 24 hours we received a significant number of geolocations, the significant number of videos of how the Russians were bombing and attacking the Ukrainian forces along the line of combat contact. We can make a conclusion that this video shows us the artillery preparation before full-scale offensive operation that the Russians launched during the previous several days. After very heavy explosions, the Russians began offensive, and today we have already discussed this piece of news. Today we got report that the Russians managed to break through the Ukrainian defense belt in the northern Kupiansk direction, and as a result of clashes, as a result of offensive operation, the Russians entered the northern part of Kupiansk and managed to dig in deeper in the vicinity of the stadium, football stadium by the name of Oskol. So this is the stadium, and according to Russian sources, currently the edge Russian positions are located somewhere here. So summarizing everything, after very heavy artillery preparation and aviation strikes, the Russians began full-scale offensive operation, and currently the territory that is located inside of this red line most likely either under complete Russian control or at least is in the gray zone, and there are very heavy clashes for the initiative. So maybe today on the 11th of November the official battle for the city of Kupiansk itself has begun. Now let's move further and let's talk about the north, about the Sudzha Kursk direction, because we have a lot of very interesting updates. First, let's talk about the village of Darina. Today, the Russian sources of the Group of Forces North published the video of how the Ukrainians were retreating from the village of Darina. So this is exactly the moment when the Ukrainians began running away from their positions. And in the second part of the video, we can see the Russian stormtroopers and Russian infantry that were clearing the basements and the ruins that led from the buildings. Based on this video, we have adjusted the map. At least the northern part was colored in Russian control. So this is the situation in this area. I'll remind you that the first reports about the Russians entered the village we got on the 8th of November, and just today, 3 days later, on the 11th of November, we got the final geolocation that confirmed Russian control over this territory. Once again, based on this video, we have adjusted the map in Russian favor. Now let's talk about the northern part. The most difficult clashes are taking place exactly in this area. Currently, we are not talking about the battle for territories or villages. Currently, we're talking about the battle for the initiative, because both the Russians and the Ukrainians managed to concentrate very powerful forces. The Ukrainians have 80th Air Mobile Brigade, 82nd Air Mobile Brigade, 41st Mechanized Brigade, 47th Mechanized Brigade, 88th Brigade. So the Ukrainians managed to concentrate the most powerful brigades in this direction, and the Ukrainians continue reinforcing this territory with more and more forces and troopers. According to information we have, the Russians also concentrated up to 50,000 soldiers in the same direction, and now both army in a very close combat. And as I understand, as for now, neither the Russians and the Ukrainians currently can take initiative in their hands. The situation is like 50-50. From one side, the Ukrainians are attacking the Russian positions in the area of Novodmytrivka, trying to secure the left flank, the western flank. So now the main activity of the Ukrainians, the main task of the Ukrainians is to hold the left flank, the western flank. If the Ukrainians are able to hold the western flank, this will allow the Ukrainians to conduct offensive operation in the direction of Staraya Sorochina, Orlovka and Pogribki. Because today we have adjusted the map back in Ukrainian favor, not in Ukrainian favor, but back in neutral favor. During the previous 24 hours, neutral mappers reported that Ukrainians managed to restore control over Staraya Sorochina and Novaya Sorochina. And I'll remind you that on the 8th of November, the Group of Forces North stated that as a result of clashes during the first day of Russian third counter-offensive operation in the Kursk direction, the Russians managed to establish complete control over these three settlements: Staraya Sorochina, Novaya Sorochina and Orlovka. And based on the report of the Group of Forces North, we have adjusted the map in Russian favor. The next day, on the 9th of November, we got the video photo with the Russian presence of the Russian units along this road, and based on this photo, we have adjusted the map in Pogribki and Makarivka. And on the 10th of November, we got reports that the Russians managed to improve their positions around Novaya Sorochina and to improve their positions in the western part of Pogribki. So this is how the map was developing among most of the mappers since 7th of November till the 10th of November. But today, on the 11th of November, we got additional report from neutral mappers that Ukrainians managed to counterattack to destroy the Russian forces between the villages and to restore control over several settlements. Currently, the clashes are taking place on the border between the village of Orlovka and the village of Novaya Sorochina. The Ukrainians are not counting their losses. They're sending more and more troopers with the purpose to stabilize the situation and not to allow the Russians to take the initiative in their hands. And that's it for today. Military Summary channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes to my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.